What is up, you guys? Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to fix four-stroking on your motorized bicycle engine. So after watching this video, your bike is going to run 10 times better than it ever has. In this video, we're going to be talking about oil ratios, spark plug gaps, needle adjustments on the carburetor, and ignition timing. All things that can cause four-stroking. Alrighty guys, so the first thing we're going to be tackling in this situation is the carb slide needle adjustment. So, a lot of people refer to jetting. Try this first because you don't have to buy any jets, you don't have to take anything apart. Super easy to do. So what we're going to do is crack this open. Yours will usually be on hand tight, but because I tightened down mine really well, I have to use a plier. So, a lot of situations this won't be like this. You actually have it in towards your frame. This motor just so happens to have a reed valve. So as we crack that open, you're going to notice that when you assemble the bike kit, you probably remember a little bit of an e-washer in there. What we're going to do is take a plier, hold the cable, and remove it. So as you can see, I got that removed. We're going to pull this out, and you can go ahead and leave that on there. Your spring's probably going to fall off. So what we're left with is the e-washer in there. We're going to go ahead and drop that out. Take that off. It only goes up and over. So what we're left with is, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but there's a needle adjustment on the carburetor. Now basically what happens is, if you go ahead and lower it to the point down here, it's actually going to make it richer, which four-stroking is associated with the bike being too rich 99% of the time. So if your clip on most stock kits is going to be at the very bottom or the next notch up, what I recommend doing is moving it up one or two notches, putting it back on the bike and trying that and see if it works for you. I've went over this in a couple videos in the past, such as the air filter video, but this basically increases your air to fuel ratio. More air means less four-stroking. So when I'm going down the road and let's say I'm having four-stroking issues at half throttle, well, this could actually be your issue, is that it's just too rich. And once you do that, try it, and if that doesn't work, we're going to move on to jetting. So, now we're going to be talking about jetting a stock NT carburetor. So, you can tell that it has the number 70 jet, and all stock kits are going to come with the number 70, at least on this style of carburetor. Now, the issue with this is that if you're on a really high elevation, and there's not a lot of air around, this could run stupid rich, and you could, easily make your bike four-stroke. To counteract that, you can go ahead and swap in a 66 or a 64 jet. Now, I'm just throwing numbers out there. Obviously, if you live in a different climate than me, or you're a little bit lower elevation, it's going to be the absolute opposite. So you're honestly just going to have to play with it. What I recommend doing is ordering a set of jets. That way it's a lot easier to, let's say take the bowl off your bike and change them out that way, opposed to tearing apart the carb every time. That's the easiest way in my opinion. So what I recommend is, if your bike's four-stroking, go down a few sizes. Don't go like a crazy amount, because then you could make it run way too lean. But it's nice to have that balanced fuel to air. So in most cases, the jetting change will fix your issue. But if you're still having problems with four-stroking, the next thing I'm going to show you should fix it. So the next thing I'm going to be showing you on how to fix four-stroking is checking your Magneto and making sure the gap is even. And if that doesn't work, move on to adjusting the ignition timing itself. So we're going to go ahead and remove these 4 Magneto screws out of the cover. And basically what we're going to be looking for is an even gap on both sides. You can use a feeler gauge, which works very accurately, but a little motorized bike hack is to take 2 pieces of paper, fold them over each other, and then try putting it in between the Magneto gap. If you don't know what I'm talking about, well, I'm about to show you. So, as you can see, we've got that off. And what we're left with, make sure not to lose your gasket, what we're left with is our Magneto right here and our magnet in the middle of it. Now, the magnet basically spins around when the engine is on. So, I'll show an example here. When you're turning your wheel, there's a lot of compression, so bear with me. You can see it's turning around your Magneto. Well, this is actually something that I recommend checking out almost immediately, because if this is scraping on the metal, well, your Magneto is not going to last long. It's going to lose its magnetism and possibly destroy it. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab a feeler gauge, and I'll show you guys what I mean. So as you can see, I've got my feeler gauge. I have it set on 0.07 millimeters, and that's what works for my Magneto. Your bike may vary. So as you can see, I can stick it in between here and here, and they feel about the same. And like I said, the paper hack works too. So the next thing I want to show you guys is once you've checked your gap, you know it's good. There's one thing that you could try, and it's honestly an experiment in itself because there's no set number. It's called adjusting your ignition timing. So if you loosen this nut here off your crankshaft and you take this off, I've done this adjustment to this engine before, and that's why it runs so good now. But there's a keyway under there, and what you can do with that keyway is shave 1 millimeter. I'll throw up a picture right here. You can shave off 1 millimeter on the side of the keyway, and what that will do is effectively, retard your ignition timing or advance it slightly. Advancing your ignition timing usually results in more top-end power and higher RPM stuff. Lowering your ignition timing or retarding it counterclockwise will give you better low cruising power and a overall better riding experience, and it won't four-stroke as bad. So in most cases, including a PK80 like this, even though it has a big bore top end and it's got so many upgrades, you can still retard the ignition timing slightly, which what I did in this situation, and it works perfectly. And here's one thing I want to say right now, is if you have a bolt-on pipe or a reed valve and then it starts four-stroking, well then you're going to have to go back to your carburetor, because what worked before won't work now. This pipe may give more airflow and cause it to run leaner, but this reed valve puts it right back into the rich zone because there's more intake volume and it takes more time for that fuel charge to transfer into the combustion chamber and through the crankcase. So that is one thing to consider, especially as the G2 reed, OZ reed, or DO reed. All those three reed valves will, decrease the flow, which sounds bad in theory, but the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So the next thing I'm going to be showing you is spark plug gap and how it can affect how your bike runs. So before we start gapping spark plugs, I just want to mention one thing. If you go ahead and spend the extra like $4 or $5 and upgrade your spark plug, get rid of this Z4C and go get yourself a B6HS. You're going to save so much hassle when it comes to electrical problems, or in this case, four-stroking problems. Now, heat range does matter slightly, but what really matters is the plug gap. But I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. A B6HS is going to run hotter than a B7HS. A B5HS could run a little bit hotter. What I recommend, if you live in a really hot climate and it's always hot and it never gets cold, I recommend running a little bit of a colder plug. That way your engine doesn't overheat and melt the piston. Since I live in, honestly, a climate that is really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer, I've opted to go right in the middle and just get a B6HS. For frame clearance, as long as you make sure you get the same numbers. This is a BM6. It's the same, plug as that. It's just a little bit shorter, so you could go with that. Just anything will be better than the stock China plug. I also want to mention you can get an E3 spark plug. You can get an Autolite racing plug. It really doesn't matter. Anything is better than the Z4C. So a quick rundown. If you have a complete stock motorized bike kit, 22 to 25 thousandths of an inch will be perfect for you. If you have the upgraded BBR tuning, stage 2, let's say CDI, or the Jaguar CDI, you want to shoot for 35 to 37 thousandths of an inch. Same goes for the Groovy ignition. Anything that's better than the stock, you want to shoot for 37 thousandths. So, since I have that, 0.8 millimeters is the metric equivalent, and what we're going to go ahead and do is run it through a spark plug and see if it feels okay. So, as you can tell, it does not fit in this one, but one I had previously gapped fits fine. So it honestly depends, and to gap a spark plug is actually quite easy. So let's say your gap is too big, just lightly tap it on the table and that will effectively lower the gap. You don't want to go too hard on one hit, you want to do small little ones, because that one hit could make or break your adjustment. So that's what I mean by that. The next thing we're going to be talking about is your gas and oil ratio. So a lot of guys will follow the manual and run that 16:1. What I recommend doing is not doing that and running a 32:1 mix, or better yet, a 40:1 mix. The reason I mentioned those higher numbers, and it says right on the back here, you can actually go off those, pause the video. What I'm basically trying to say is if you run 16:1, you're running way too oil rich, your plug is going to foul out quicker, your engine's not going to break in as fast, and if it's already broken in, it's not going to go as fast. A lot of oil won't allow the engine to run out as fast as it can, And actually, when you run too much oil, your gas mix becomes thicker, and the oil can't even get to the combustion chamber to lube the bearings, the cylinder walls, the piston rings. So it's actually better to run 32-to-1 for an iron cylinder, which, again, you're going to have to do your research to make sure it's an iron cylinder. And if you have a chrome lining cylinder, go ahead and move it up to 40-to-1. And the brand of oil doesn't really matter. It's a controversial topic, but personally, I run Lucas Semi-Synthetic. A lot of bike guys do, and I think it's one of the best oils out there. So, in the beginning of the video, you guys probably heard that I was going to show you how to modify the exhaust. Well, thinking about it a little bit more, everybody's going to have a different pipe. You can have an expansion chamber with or without a muffler. You could have a flex fit. You could have a stock pipe. There's so many different pipes out there that I can't give one recommendation. But if you do have the stock pipe, what you can do that will usually help is drill a couple holes at the bottom of the baffle. As you can see on this pipe here, there's a couple extra holes in there that help the breathability of this motor. And this is just a stock exhaust, kind of cut and modified to fit the expansion chamber. But most of you guys are going to run this. So just go ahead and try a couple different options. Like I said, you can drill holes. You can remove this cap altogether. Try that. You can cut the internal stinger on the inside. Possibilities are endless with this thing. But what I recommend doing is just freeing up airflow. So guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something from it. Like I said, I didn't go in depth too much because most of my viewers just want to go in their garage, try to fix their bike and get it running better. Like, if you want to see more in-depth on how to tune your ignition timing and stuff like that with the keyway and stuff, let me know, because that way I can get video ideas for what I want to do. But with that all being said, see you guys in the next one.